welcome. We have Jordan Theresa here with us, who is a YouTuber, internet personality, all of those lovely things, and also lives with OCD. I also have OCD myself, and today we're going to be talking about managing OCD through seasonal shifts. I think it's very relevant for all of us, right? The seasons are changing, time is changing for some people. It's just a lot to go through in general. And then, especially when you have OCD, it can be so much more and so overwhelming. Um, yeah, I think that we'll let Jordan take it from here and just kind of get to know Jordan's lived experience with OCD and then how it ties into the seasonal shifts, the time changing, daylight savings, all that kind of stuff, and how these changes can make OCD feel more intense. So, Jordan, if you want to kick it off and share a little bit about your story with OCD.
Of course. Hi, my name's Jordan Theresa. Firstly, thank you so much for having me. Thank you everybody for joining. I'm a social commentary YouTuber and I'm also a podcaster. And I think it's like quite a common story that I've essentially sort of had OCD my whole life, but the symptoms definitely got more severe around 5 years ago. And I'd say that's when I like truly started living with OCD. And essentially it involves very, intrusive thoughts, a lot of like rituals and compulsions, which like felt very inescapable for a very long time. Now I'm in a much better space with it and I can live with it a lot more. And, I, like many people, find that the colder, darker seasons, autumn and winter really does impact my OCD. There are a few ways in which it does impact it. And I'm very lucky that I don't suffer with seasonal depression. Like, I, like many people, I am happier in the summer, don't get me wrong. Like, I've got festivals, I've got holidays, I have a tan, like, it's all going to be okay. Um, but I am really lucky that I don't get like the full seasonal depression, but that doesn't mean that the change in seasons doesn't impact my OCD. So the first that I find is just the festive season in general. And I think when you have sort of struggling mentally. I think the festive season is going to be difficult anyway. But I think with OCD, what I find quite difficult is that there's already a lot of pressure. There's like social pressure, there's financial pressure. I also find like it sounds so silly, but having to like be around family. It can be a lot dependent on the relationship that you have with your family. And another thing that I find a little difficult, and this is why I only go to my parents for like 2 days and then I come back to my home, is because I don't have a bedroom there. I'm like totally out of my routine and I'm not in my space and like I don't feel super comfortable. And also I think another thing that adds to it is that when you go on social media, it seems that every single person is having the time of their life. And I think that can make OCD feel a lot worse because it induces like a lot of anxiety, and a lot of like, just like not very nice thoughts. Like it can put you on edge a little bit, I find. And then another aspect that I find a little difficult is actually after the festive season when everything begins to quieten down a little bit. Like everyone sort of like goes in, turns to a hermit January, February time. And I find one of the things that really helps my OCD is keeping myself really busy, especially socially, making plans after work, making plans on the weekend. And I find that because it's really cold outside and it's miserable, I just want to like stay inside. And I think that almost that time spent alone for me personally, I think that gives so much space for my OCD to ruminate and all this time for me to do my rituals. And I think that can sort of lead me to get trapped in like these never ending cycles, I guess, with rituals and stuff. Um, and I find that those are sort of two different problems, but I find that sort of what helps me personally sort of overcome these things is I think sort of general advice, I guess, is that, because the clock's going back, it's getting darker earlier, the weather's more miserable. I think it's so important to maintain your routine. I find that with OCD, having a proper routine is something that really helps me stay on top of my symptoms. I'm self-employed, so it can be a little difficult to maintain a routine sometimes, but I think something that really helps is I have a space that I use as an office every day, and I make sure I get up and I get ready and I leave the house by a certain time. And I find that essentially keeping on my routine and also making sure that I'm actually looking after myself. So actually leaving the house every day, that I'm getting enough sleep. When it comes to being, essentially when it comes to my sort of issue of I'm a bit less busy and that makes my OCD a little worse, I find that it can be so easy to become really complacent in those colder months. And essentially, even when everything in my body is telling me, please do not go out, like don't make plans, I'm like, I force myself to make the plans because I know in the grand scheme of things, mentally, it's going to make me feel a lot better. And essentially trying to fill up my social calendar because I know it's going to help alleviate my symptoms. And then when it sort of comes to pressures around the festive season, I find that not only, staying off social media, not doom scrolling through like random people that I went to school with 10 years ago's Instagram stories and seeing that they were having a better Christmas than me. But also, I think that when it comes to like staying with family and having like a disruption to routine, I actually found the best thing to deal with that is to just tell someone about it. I think that there's a lot of, I mean, as we probably all know here, there's so much shame surrounding OCD. That I think I felt so much shame in telling someone. But now that I didn't tell my mum for years that I had OCD, but now that I've told her, I can say, oh, look, this thing's making me anxious, this thing's making me anxious. And look, she sometimes can do something to help. Most of the time, she doesn't really have like any actual thing that could help me. Do you know what I mean? I can't be like, I'm really anxious about seeing my nan. She can't uninvite my nan to Christmas. But I find that even just telling her and getting it off my chest, really, really helps. But yeah, no, that's sort of all of my thoughts so far.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of those. I feel like they're super relatable, especially the stuff around the holidays. I feel like that's so hard for so many of us with OCD. So those were some really good tips. I did want to go back a little and ask if you're willing to share, like, when you first started noticing your OCD and like what kind of themes you are dealing with. Yeah, just a little background on how OCD like shows up for you.
Yeah, so my OCD, it sort of surrounds this concept of essentially like losing very important things in my life, losing my job, like things like that. That's like something that really affects me. Also, I think like a lot of my I had like suffered very, very badly with intrusive thoughts for a very, very long time. And the thing with intrusive thoughts is that it affects what you care about the most. So there would be like a lot of intrusive thoughts surrounding like really like, stigmatized, like bigoted things that would make me feel really anxious thinking that I was like a bigoted person when really I wasn't. It was just my OCD.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you first start noticing these?
I was probably around 2021, so I'm 27 now, and it was around the age of like 2021 that they started like I started noticing it, and I didn't know what OCD was at the time because I'd only known about it sort of through media where like it's a very stereotypical
Yeah.
representation. So I just didn't I genuinely thought I was a monster. Like that's like the first thing that comes into your
Yeah.
head that you're like, I'm a horrible person. This is a reflection on me. And then when you research into it, you realize like, oh, this is actually a condition. Like this isn't actually my fault or a reflection of who I am as a person.
Yeah. And like what kind of led you to realizing that it was OCD that you're dealing with? Like, was it just like researching online? Did you reach out for help? Like, what was that process kind of like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely researching online. I think when I sort of put the two and two together was because the intrusive thoughts came first, and then it was the rituals and the compulsions that came second. So when I started doing the rituals, I was like, wait a minute, this seems a bit familiar. And then like I did some research and I realized, and I think something that I struggled with a lot was because I was doing the rituals myself, I felt like, oh, I've started this so I can get out of it. Like I've made this quote quote unquote mess so I can get myself out of it. And I think for a very long time, I really struggled and I didn't get any help because I thought that I could be able to fix it myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how did you kind of learn to like live with it? Did you get professional help? Did you just like how was that for you?
So I have been working with a therapist for nearly 4 years now, and that's essentially what like did it really. Like it completely changed my life. Being able to have access to a therapist and just have someone to talk to every week, and like I think having more understanding about it really helped, and realizing all of the you'd be surprised the amount of people in your life that do have OCD, but no one ever talks about it. So that made me feel a lot better as well. Yeah, and it was a long process, do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't an immediate, it wasn't like a linear process either. I was constantly going back. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's huge for a lot of us with OCD. It's like we think that we're in this mess because we put ourselves in it so we can get ourselves out. And it's unfortunately not that simple. Like, I wish we could just get ourselves out of it, right? And I always like to say that, yes, the therapy for OCD, it's hard, it's difficult, it can be scary, but living with OCD is scarier. Like, you've already done the scarier part, at least therapy will help you get better, help you learn how to deal with these thoughts and have them not really take over your life. I did want to ask you one more question. I want to know how is it like with such a public facing career having OCD? Like, do your intrusive thoughts latch on to your job ever? And like just being in front of all these people, like, how does that kind of feel for you?
Yeah, no, a lot of my OCD is tied to my job, is tied to the fact that it's a public facing job and that if I do fail or if something happens, it's in front of a very large audience. That's definitely been something that's induced so much anxiety in me. It definitely doesn't make things better, I will say. But I think something that does help is when I talk very openly about the fact that I have OCD, I know that it's nothing to be ashamed of. At the end of the day, it's nobody's fault that they have OCD. And I think that's something that I've tried to overcome for a very long time. So I think something that does help is talking about it because, a lot of people have messaged me, have left comments saying like, I appreciate the fact that you talk about having OCD because it is difficult to meet people in your life that have it. And like, I think that if it's someone that you're watching and that you like their content, I don't know. Whenever I find out someone has OCD, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I know it sounds so stupid, but it is like we get each
I
other.
know. It's like,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so yeah, no, that's definitely something that's helped is just being really open and honest about it.
Yeah. And do you see like a connection in anything with like the seasons and the times changing and that like weight of doing your job and having OCD? Like, do you feel like they play into each other at all? And if so, like, how do you keep yourself like good and okay and like grounded during this time? Like, how do you help yourself just keep going forward?
Yeah, I definitely think there's like a lot of aspects when it comes to like work and like the seasons. Obviously, like the days are shorter, so it's so much harder to get out of bed. And then when you get
Yeah,
home, it's really dark, and you're just like, oh my God,
I
But
know.
I find that, and also it's like I think a lot of people feel it in December. It's like December's a real crackdown time for work because there's
Yeah.
deadlines. You have less time to do it in. So again, like I said earlier, I think the most important part is maintaining a routine. My routine is like very important to me. And it's the thing, you can make adjustments to the routine. You can be like, you know what, I want to get out of bed half an hour later in the winter and finish work half an hour later, just so I don't have to get up and it's like um pitch black. Do you know what I mean? And I find like the best thing with coping with the seasons is having like warm
Mhm.
lighting, burning the candles, electric blanket on, like,
Yeah,
making it as
always.
cozy as possible. But yeah, no, I find that the best thing is to essentially just maintain my routine. And if any point it's getting like too much, or like I can feel my symptoms getting, a little bit worse, I do just find like as soon as I sort of sense it, it's just talking to someone about it, even if it's not my therapist, like talking to my mum about it, talking to like one of my other friends that has OCD about it, because like a problem shared is a problem halved. I know that it's like really cliche and a bit cringe, but it is true. Like once you get it off your chest, like you do just feel so much better.
Yeah, 100%. Do you mind sharing like a little bit of what your routine looks like? Just because I feel like that might help people that are like just thinking about where to start with even making a bit of a routine. I know it's different for everybody, but if you just have a few key points that you think really help you.
I think the thing that really helps me, my new thing that I'm doing at the moment, so I can't even say it's part of my routine because I've literally been doing it for a week. But I find that something that does make OCD worse is using a lot of social media, like using a lot of TikTok, using a lot of Instagram, Twitter, because I find that these like you essentially just get trapped in like these like algorithmic loops and you're being served like very similar content. And if you're someone who you have OCD about very specific things, when you're, for example, you have OCD surrounding like true crime, and then all this true crime content is coming up on your feed, it can be quite distressing. So I've actually found something that's really, really helped in my routine is I don't scroll on my phone first thing in the morning. I actually like read 10, 20 pages of a book. And like that is something that really helps me like not essentially I feel like just going on your phone first thing immediately puts you on edge. And I'm trying to think of things that are really key in my routine. I think a key part of my routine is leaving the house, like actually leaving the house, because obviously I know a lot of people work remotely or a lot of people are freelance. Even if you don't spend your whole day out of the house and you just spend that first, 9 a.m. to 11 just in a coffee shop working, I find that like that motion of getting up, getting dressed, actually getting ready, and that doesn't mean like getting glam. I don't wear makeup on most days, to be honest, but like, showering, doing whatever routines that you do, putting an outfit on and just ducking out of the door, I find is something that really like actually does me wonders because I find that, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same, but I find that being in my house is where my OCD is the worst because you have all of these rituals that are specific to your home. So it's really nice to be able to get out and just be in like a new space.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's so funny because, like, I love being home. I love being cozy. I love being in bed, but my OCD is worse at home. And then I also recognize that, like, as soon as I get outside of the house, whatever it's for, like grabbing coffee, just going on a 5-minute walk, immediately my mood feels better. My OCD feels better. I just feel less anxious overall. So I totally second that. Like, one thing, if you can get out of the house for whatever reason, just like make yourself go outside. It feels so much better. Um, Thank you for sharing all of that, Jordan. Yeah, so we're gonna wrap that segment up. I do want to just go back to what Jordan talks about with therapy and how important therapy is when you have OCD. Even if you don't know if you necessarily have it, but some of the things that we've been talking to feel familiar to you guys, or if you're struggling with the time change, the seasonal changes more than usual. And I know it can be hard to distinguish what more than usual is, but if you're really feeling like this time of year is like taking over your life, stopping you from living how you normally would, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. Even if you don't know if you have OCD, talking to a licensed therapist, they can help you figure out what it is you're going through. And if it is OCD, they can set you up on the right path for ERP therapy, which is the most clinically effective treatment for OCD. So with that, I wanted to open it up to the Q&A portion, which is always super fun. You guys have been submitting some questions for Jordan, and I'm just gonna read them, Jordan, and then you can go ahead and answer them if that's cool with you.
Yeah, of course, that's perfect.
Okay, amazing. All right, let's see. Okay, so our first question, can you give more context to the 4-year journey of, I think this means like your 4-year journey of discovering OCD and living with it and stuff. Did you ever get discouraged and feel like therapy wouldn't work or that your OCD wouldn't get better?
Yeah, so within this sort of, I guess, like 4 or 5 year journey, I would say there was almost a process of like having an issue, not realizing it was a problem because I didn't really recognize OCD because of the stereotypes in the media, and then trying to fix it myself. And then, funnily enough, the season where my OCD was at its worst was in January. And I think that's another reason why I can imagine a lot of people find the winter very hard is a lot of people have hit a real low before. And I think that like hitting that sort of anniversary point can actually be quite triggering. So I find that the most important thing that I've taken from therapy is number one, it's not linear. you're gonna feel like you're taking steps back. You're gonna almost in a way, I'm trying to think of the right word, but like, you stop doing a ritual and then you pick it back up again and you go, no. Do you know what I mean? But I think it's like the most important thing is to remember it's not a linear journey. And also OCD, I guess in a way, OCD recovery looks different for everyone. So I think a big thing for me wasn't necessarily getting, never doing another ritual ever again. Like I still do rituals in my everyday life, but my most important thing was to essentially be able to actually live with it because it got to the point where the rituals completely took over my life and it like totally destroyed my quality of life. And, I like cancelled plans. I didn't go out to things. I isolated myself for days at a time. I couldn't get out of bed at some points because I was so daunted by all of the rituals that I had to do. That those are probably the two biggest takeaways was the fact that it's not a linear journey and also recovery looks different for everyone. Some people's goal is to never have to do rituals again. And then other people's like myself, my goal was to more, be able to essentially live with these rituals. And it like, it truly is night and day compared to 4 years ago where I literally could not function at all. And now it's like I barely do really that many. But again, I feel like it's not good to always measure it on that barometer of like, I'm doing rituals, I'm not doing rituals, etc.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for sharing that. Um, our next question is, okay, I feel like around a new year, I feel like I'm running out of time. And with OCD, it feels like I can see it run out constantly, especially around this time of year. As a student, especially, it's already really stressful, and I feel like I never have enough time. Is that relatable at all? And do you have any advice? Much love.
Thank you for the much love. This is a really difficult one. I Hmm. I think that I try not to think. I try not to really even like I celebrate the new year, but I think again the new year similar to Christmas, it is that particular pressure. And I think that it's really important to essentially like reframe what you view as time running out. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the person that submits this question is in their 20s. And like when you like actually figure out like how long our lifespan is and like, let's say we all live till the age of like 80 or something. And that's actually like people are more living to 90 and 100 nowadays. You are like essentially a quarter or just over a quarter into your life. You have plenty of time. And I think like the most important thing, at least for me anyway, with OCD, like treating my OCD is not feeling like I was under a time constraint because I found that pressure actually makes things a lot worse. So I found that was an important thing, but I'd love to know your thoughts actually, because I think that's a really good question. And even I'm a little bit like, hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I agree with you completely because time is such a weird concept, right? And I struggle with that, especially always running out of time. Like, personally, I'm trying to get into business school and stuff like that, right? And then in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I have this timeline of I need to do this by then, like finish school by then, have a certain job by a certain age, and like get married at a certain, like all these expectations I have for myself. And I feel like I'm running out of time. And then that really like freaks my OCD out and freaks me out. Something that I use to like kind of help me, especially around this time of year, is that, and I say this like I guess it can be different for everyone, but it helps me to realize like time is relative in a sense, right? Like yes, it exists and stuff. However, it's not necessarily like what's right for one person isn't right for everybody. And I've learned this a lot just going through life. Like, you think that you have to do things at a certain time. You think that you have to like graduate at a certain time. And if not, the whole world will collapse. That's not true. I finished college a year later than I was supposed to. I had to take a break because of mental health. I'm doing just fine now. I'm doing honestly, like career-wise, a lot better than a lot of other people I went to high school with, and so are a lot of my friends. So it's very like helpful for me to take a step back and see that everyone's journey is not the same and it doesn't have to be. And your journey being a little different with like even time-wise is not going to stop you from getting to where you want to be and where you want to go. I think just holding on to that sentiment and then knowing that the only like actual time limits that you have are the ones you put on yourself. You don't have to go with what people think is like the right way to do things because that it doesn't really hold true to anyone because it's just like a it's just society, right? Like you are your
Well, it's
own
a total
person.
construct. It's a total,
Yeah.
total construct. Like, I even see the way that age has like really changed amongst my generation, like and our generation. I feel like I saw someone tweet saying 25 to 35 is the new 20s. But like
Yeah.
it's true. Like, you need also you need to give yourself some grace where you think about the fact that we lost about 2 years of our lives to lockdown and like that's delayed everything. And I especially think even New Year, I don't really do New Year's resolutions or anything because I've seen like a lot of people sort of treat September as their new year because there's like it's like the start of school season, it's the start of like autumn and stuff like that. I feel like having like a fresh start in the middle of winter, like it's like it doesn't make sense. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like if you want to push like starting like having a little New Year ritual to spring or to autumn, no one is standing in your way from doing
No.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I also like to kind of think of the winter instead of like I love the concept of January 1st like being a fresh start in a sense, but not necessarily being like the end, like like not 2025 ending. I like to see it as 2026 starting. And I think something that helped me last year, and it sounds so funny, but there was this like trend going around on social media that was like the great lock-in. And it was like in January, you're gonna like start really taking care of yourself. And obviously you should do that whenever you want and whenever you can, but trying to like view the start of the new year or seeing the holidays coming closer and closer, not as the end of something, but actually as like an opportunity for you to be like, okay, like, yeah, this is happening, but here's all this other stuff I can do. And I can really take this like winter time and like put more energy into like self-care and like caring about myself. So a little convoluted, but I hope that's kind of helpful.
No, I think that's great. I think that's so great. I think that like again, like with having OCD, like a part of the recovery process and like a part of the like living with it is like actually looking after yourself. Like you can have
Yeah.
all of the goals that you want to have and you can have the I don't want to do this ritual anymore or I don't want to, think about this anymore or I want to be able to leave the house at this time and blah blah blah. You can have all those things you want, but like it's going to be so much harder if you aren't actually like properly looking after yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you really have to just get back to the basics, and it's crazy how much they help your OCD overall.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So our next question is, being self-employed equals challenging to keep a steady routine. Preach, Jordan. Very true. You mentioned that it's hard to avoid doom scrolling. That's relatable. Do you think OCD contributes to the temptation of doom scrolling? Why? I mean, it's even called doom scrolling, yet we do it anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think with OCD is that it's like, I think there's like multiple aspects to it. Obviously, some people can have like one of their actual rituals can be scrolling on their phone. Like, weirdly, now that I think about it, I've never thought about this before, but it's like quite true. Like, one of my rituals is if I like a picture on Instagram, I have to like three more. So it's like this like whole, like I feel like a lot of people have an OCD number. My OCD number is four. And like, I like doing things four times. And so if I'm on Instagram and I like a picture, I go, oh, I have to find three more that I want to like now and scroll, 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 scroll. So I find that doom scrolling can affect people with OCD in that way. But also another thing is I find that I'm someone who, and I'm sure many people who have OCD are the same, I have a very like overactive brain. I'm very obsessive, and I think that you can end up in these spirals. And I think scrolling seems like a quick fix because like it keeps your brain occupied,
Yeah.
like it keeps you like immediately entertained, and it kind of takes your mind off being in an OCD spiral. But it's one of those things where, as I said earlier, it's a very temporary fix, and then like next thing you know, if you're scrolling on like a certain type of content, you're then having intrusive thoughts about that content that you've just seen, and like, or if you like to TikTok or something, you have to like three more to like sort of fill that OCD like itch.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like people with OCD, I can imagine are quite susceptible to getting sucked into things. Like I think that another aspect of it where you sort of get sucked into it is the fact that you can never ending scroll now. Like I remember back in the day when you used to just have a following tab and you used to get to the end of like the scroll and then you used to be like, all right, that's done. And then you'd like put down the phone. Now it's like never ending. And I think especially like when I was in like the worst parts of my OCD, which is about 4 years ago, I was so depressed that like I think scrolling is like sometimes like the depression activity, like if you're doing it
Mhm.
for hours and hours and hours at a time, which I think is what happened with me as well. So I think it's one of those things where again, I think social media can be used in moderation, like, you know, very healthily. But I think that especially if you are like really struggling with your OCD, I find that like it's just another sort of obsessive, like compulsive it can sometimes be an obsessive compulsive behavior. You can also utilize it as a distraction, which actually kind of makes things worse, etc.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for sharing that. Our next question is, were you ever misdiagnosed?
No, not as far as I'm aware. I've actually never received an official diagnosis because over here the medical system, it's on a national health service here. So essentially you can go to the doctors and say, I'm suffering from these symptoms, and they'll give you the medication for it, but they won't actually give you the diagnosis. Like it's actually, I'm not really sure why it works like that, to be honest. But yeah, no, I was pretty lucky that I feel like I like recognized it straight away for what it was. And then when I spoke to, you know, a licensed psychotherapist about it and I spoke to a doctor about it, they were both like, yeah, it sounds like OCD.
Yeah. I also was never like officially misdiagnosed, but they did miss my OCD in terms like I was diagnosed with anxiety, like severe anxiety, and was on medication for that and did normal talk therapy for that. But they didn't recognize that I was also dealing with OCD and that a lot of my anxiety stemmed from OCD until actually like for me it's kind of funny. My like best friend is a therapist and I've known her since like I was 12 years old and she was noticing symptoms of OCD and she like was like, "Hey, like maybe you should get this checked out." And eventually I did bring it up to my doctor and then they connected me with a psychiatrist that did like the OCD testing for me and everything. And since then it made things so much more clear for me having that actual diagnosis because it helped me realize why I was so anxious and it helped me realize like why I'm doing these things repetitively and like no, not everybody thinks with this way and no, this is not normal anxiety. So misdiagnosis or just like not having that diagnosis and only being treated for one thing can definitely make things harder. I think like for me, like the best thing you can maybe do for yourself is to just like advocate for yourself, which can be really hard, especially when you have OCD and anxiety. But if you are wondering or think that you have been misdiagnosed, try talking to a psychiatrist or bring it up to your doctor or a therapist and like going from there. Um, Okay. Next question is, do you have any tips for calming your physical symptoms during an OCD flare-up? I often find even once my mind feels calmer, my body stays in fight or flight for days or even weeks after I've been triggered, and I'd love to know if you have any advice.
Hmm. By physical symptoms, do you reckon that's like more like sort of the anxiety symptoms where it's like, you know, the heartbeat, or do you reckon it's like the
Yeah.
rituals? Hmm. I find that essentially, I think like the most important thing when it comes to mental health is treating it just as seriously as physical health. So, you know, if you were playing football and you sprained your ankle, you're not going to go walking on your ankle fine for the week or 2 weeks afterwards. You're going to have to put your feet up and you're going to have to take it easy and all of this. I find that the best thing when things like that happen is to, it sounds really silly, but like is to take it easy and to treat it like you've had physical injury. And like, you know, because in a way you have like physically your body is in fight or flight mode. And I think that sometimes when you push yourself a bit too hard, where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna like do this day and do this day and do this day, and I'm just gonna try and shake this off. It can actually make things a lot worse. So I find like within that like few days afterwards, just to try and like take it easy basically, and essentially treat it similar to if you had like a physical injury.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And with my OCD, like, I can totally relate to this question because I'll have like a flare up or something and I'll have like the mental compulsions and rituals and stuff. But I also get extreme, like physical anxiety with my OCD. Like, my hands are tingling. Like, there's just something like in me that physically feels wrong, you know? And it'll carry on for days afterwards. Like I'll just feel like a tension like in my body in my chest that won't go away. even after I feel better mentally. The way that I kind of deal with that is similar to what Jordan is saying, where you need to take a break. You need to rest. You need to let your body like get back to like regulation because just it's so similar to like having a physical injury. And also like there's nothing wrong with slowing down a little bit, you know? Like you need to realize that you just went through something extremely taxing mentally and physically, right? So giving yourself a little pause, taking things a little bit easier is not bad. And I know it's so hard sometimes with like the grind culture that we all have and thinking like, oh, but it's just like a mental thing. Like, no, like it's still just as important, just like Jordan was saying. So I agree with that 100%. Um, Also, I've noticed, and I hate that this works, but exercise really helps. And I hate going to the gym. I hate it. But whenever I do go, whenever I'm anxious and I just go for a walk, even on the treadmill or just outside, it helps my physical symptoms so much. And something that I've been like telling myself is treat exercise like a prescription from your doctor. Like be like, yep, I'm prescribed 30-minute walk outside every day. Treat it like that. Don't be like, oh, it's something like maybe I should do. If you treat it like medicine, because it essentially is, it helps you so much. It can make it easier to kind of just force yourself to do that. And that helps my physical symptoms a lot.
Yeah,
I hate
definitely.
that it does, but it does.
No, it does. Like I'm not a huge exercise girly, but I'm like a walking girly. Like
Yeah.
I walk absolutely everywhere. I take public transport everywhere. And I find that like something that if I'm in one of those like OCD days where I literally like don't want to leave the house, but I know that leaving the house will make me feel better, I like incentivize myself. Like I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this album that just came out and I'm really excited to listen to it. And it's gonna be so much better if I'm listening to it as I'm walking. And then I'm gonna walk to a bakery and I'm gonna get myself a pastry. Like essentially incentivize like treats throughout. Essentially, like I'm a
Yeah.
bit of a dog, but like in a good way.
No, I do that too. For me, it'll be like, okay, let me take a walk, but to like the Lush store or like to Sephora and like get a tiny treat for myself. It sounds like weird, but it really helps. I think that's so smart. All right. Our next question is, you mentioned the pressure that comes with the holidays exacerbating your OCD. I feel the same way. When there's pressure from other people, it makes me feel super stressed. This is especially true with our OCD, which I struggle with if I have a crush on someone and start to open up to people about it. Almost immediately after I start to feel Almost immediately after they open up to people about it, they start to feel the dread clamp down. Why does this happen? I want to be able to have and sustain a crush and eventually have it blossom into a relationship that I tell my friends and family about, but that hasn't been doable for a while.
So sorry, what was the question
Yeah, the
part?
question is, let me see. I think it's okay. So the question here, they're kind of asking like, why is it with OCD, in this case specifically our OCD, that like you want to have a crush, you want to have a relationship, but like the thought of it or like finally opening up to somebody about it can like completely like freak you out and scare you and like make you like feel just like dreadful instead of excited and happy and able to pursue it. So I
Hmm.
think it's like asking like, why does this happen with OCD? And like how can you kind of like help like how can you move past it in a sense?
I will say obviously everyone's journey is different, and I don't want to give sort of any like sort of advice because ROCD is something that I haven't like experienced. I will say that in my experience of like giving my intrusive thoughts like less power is it sounds really silly, but I almost treat like talking about my OCD and like opening up about like certain specific parts of my OCD like training a muscle. Like I always sort of, when you're training a muscle, it always feels really shit at first, but there does become like a break and it does become easier and easier the more that you do it. But I would love to know your thoughts actually, because I'm not like 100% on that question, but like I feel like when it came to my own OCD and like things that I've struggled with and like talking about it and talking about specific things related to my OCD, I found the more that I spoke about it, the less power I gave it because I wasn't as scared anymore. Because the more I kept talking about it, the more open I became with it and the less anxious I was and like filled with dread I was when I was like discussing what affected me.
Yeah, 100%. I do have ROCD and for me, it didn't come up like when I've like had a crush on someone in a sense. Like I didn't feel like that pressure that you're talking about. But I think what this question is asking is like the thing with like ROCD and like having a crush on someone or liking someone or even if it's not romantic, like wanting to be friends with someone is that there's the pressure of the other person and like how your thoughts and feelings affect the other person. Or if you like tell somebody or like the fear of telling somebody because like what if it doesn't work out and like what if they judge you or what if they aren't as supportive as you want them to be? So I think a lot of the pressure that comes with like having a oh sorry, I just see this. Oh no, okay, sorry. The chat popped up for me randomly. Um the pressure with like just having all these other people and figures involved can be a lot. But I think what helps me especially is realizing that it's it's still you, right? And yes, there's other people involved and stuff, but there's other people involved in everything. And to a certain extent, you have to allow yourself to be uncomfortable because even if you don't have OCD, having a crush on somebody, like that's still taking a chance, right? Like talking to them, it's still taking a chance. Of course, OCD makes it so much harder, but that's still something that would exist whether you have OCD or not, obviously to a much lesser extent. But like what helped me kind of like take leaps in my relationships and like kind of ignore that anxiety and actually like talk to my partner, who's now my partner of like almost 6 years, right? Was just like, yeah, this is going to feel uncomfortable, but there is a good chance that the outcome could be good. And also, like, what worked for me was reminding myself, what's the worst outcome? The worst outcome is that, yeah, they reject you, and that does suck, but you're going to be okay. That's fine. Like, that's the worst thing. It's not like you're going to die. It's not like something horrible, horrible is going to happen to you. You'll be able to make it out after that. So, kind of reminding myself that helps me a little bit with my ROCD. Again, like I'm obviously like not a therapist and I'm sorry if that's a little unclear, but I think that's like generally helpful to just realize that like yeah, it's scary and it's going to be scary, but it's not going to be the end of the world. And of course, it's hard to believe with OCD, but that's what's helped me personally. Cool. Okay, our next question. How do you handle OCD symptoms appearing at the end of the day when you've already had your morning routine and been out of the house? Um, and when you come back home and everything floods back in, how do you manage those things? Sorry, how do you manage when those things become heavy for you despite your routine?
That is a really good question. I think again, it sounds so silly, but I do have a nighttime routine as well. And like, don't get me wrong, my nighttime routine, it does like involve rituals and stuff. Like I'm not like free from that like at all. But I found that the way that I try to sort of, and again, there's obviously, I know this isn't going to be like super helpful to everyone, but obviously this is just personal to my experience, is I find that number one, I do find that by leaving the house, I am sort of in that flow state. And I do find that when I go back into my home, even though it is a place where I do, my OCD is probably at its like highest, I am still sort of remain in that flow state compared to if I just stayed in all day. But I find that having a night routine is something that has really helped me. And also the way, I think the way that I try to sort of, I guess, in a way, like discipline myself with doing my rituals is I think if I stay up all night playing rituals, what are we talking about? If I stay up all night doing rituals, then I'm going to be absolutely exhausted tomorrow, and that is going to affect my mental health. Like I try to sort of think about it very rationally, and I try to think about the fact how poorly these how essentially engaging with rituals, until the very late night is going to make my OCD worse, and it's going to make me physically not feel great. And like the most important part of a good night routine is like the self-care of it all, and like making sure you're really looking after yourself. So I find that's two things that help is like not is trying not to get lost in the rituals by thinking about the actual effect that they could have on me in the morning, like if I don't get a lot of sleep or if I'm really anxious before I go to bed. And again, like I think something which I can imagine makes a lot of people's OCD worse when they do get in from the evening is again, like as soon as you get in from the evening and you've been out all day, you do have a little scroll on your phone. And sometimes you can sort of get like trapped, like sucked into it and like really sort of scroll for a really, really long time. And I find scrolling before bed is just a terrible idea. Like it's just terrible because then, next thing you know, you've seen like a really traumatic video on your phone and then you're trying to get to sleep. And it's like obviously that's not going to help anyone. So again, like having a night routine, if you do want to engage in OCD things, try and really think about the effect of it. And then also I've been loving my reading at the moment, but like read a little book. And like this is the thing is that I think the best thing about reading is that like if you're someone who you want to have a book, a nice light read before bed, there are so many options. And there's like so many options, with OCD where like there's so many different things that trigger so many different people. And there's like certain books that I really would not want to read because it would trigger my OCD. So it's essentially like being a little careful with the book choice as well and making sure it's not anything that's going to distress you. But yeah, no, that's something that has helped me personally.
Yeah, awesome. Um, okay, next question is I find that my compulsions are often unavoidable because I feel quite lonely at this time of year. As someone who is fairly introverted, I don't always have people to rely on at these times. Do you have any advice on what to do at these times that don't involve relying on friends and family?
Hmm. I'm trying to think outside of answering doing a routine. Do you have anything that you'd be able to, any advice that you'd be able to give on that question?
Yeah, let me think. Um, yeah, so something that I do, and because I get kind of lonely around like the holiday time too, and I mean, I feel like that's common for a lot of us, but it does make my OCD worse in the sense that I feel like, oh, like, why am I not at a party right now? Like, why am I not doing this? Like, did I get people like the right gifts? Like, did I do enough in all of this? And something that helps me, and this sounds so cliche, but it's like creating a very cozy vibe for yourself. And I know that sounds
Oh, the cozy vibe is everything. Like the cozy vibe, romanticizing your winter is everything.
yes. And like, I'm not trying to be like a Delulu girly or something, but romanticizing your winter, your cozy vibe. Like, I like to like take a nice warm shower, dim lighting, and then put on a like scented lotion. That's very important to me because then my skin feels all moisturized and like wearing cozy, fresh pajamas, having like a warm like soup or a snack or like mac and cheese and watching a calming like funny TV show or something that helps me just kind of ground myself honestly into coming back to myself without having to engage in like certain compulsions or like scrolling. One of my compulsions is like if I'm bored or have nothing to do, I'll like just scroll on Instagram and like look at what everyone else is doing. That makes me feel worse, and then I feel bad about myself. So to avoid that, I feel like doing these like things that seem extra but are like self-care oriented can really help you distract yourself from like doing those compulsions. And I know it sounds super cliche, but I'm one of those people that believe things are cliche for a reason, and that's because a lot of people have said them because maybe they work, you know? So that's something that's really helped me. I also find that journaling. Journaling can be helpful. I know it's not helpful for a lot of, like, not for everybody. It's different for each person. But sometimes just like writing out your thoughts and stuff and like having it out there feels like a release from like just having it trapped in your mind. A lot of my compulsions are mental. So I think that's might be why it helps me. But journaling is huge. And then also just like curating that vibe for yourself. That helps me a lot during this time of year. And it also just makes me like not think about like it being so dark at like 5 p.m. and stuff because you're
Yeah.
focusing more on trying to enjoy something as opposed to like focusing on what's going on outside of you.
Yeah, I find that also like engaging with a real like hands-on
Yeah.
activity really helps me. So like if there's a day where I just know that I'm having a bad OCD day, I'm not feeling great, I actually like will pull up a recipe of like what I want to make for dinner, something I've never done before, and then like really just like I know it can be quite difficult because I find that with activities that there is sort of rituals that do come with them sometimes, but I
Yeah.
find that if I choose like something new to do, and like I like essentially if it's an activity that I can get lost in, because not everyone likes cooking. You know, if
Yeah.
you get lost, if you can get lost in like as in like the sort of positive way, if you can get yourself really lost into cooking or gaming or like again exercise,
Yeah.
I think it's really important to like essentially like if you can find your activity where you can get like super super lost in it. So like if there are times where you can't really rely on friends, you can't really rely on family, you're feeling really lonely, you're still not only occupying your mind, but you're also like occupying your body as well.
Yeah, I agree. And like one more thing before we move on to the next question, something that helps me is podcasts, right? Like having a podcast on in the background in general, it helps me fill my brain, like whether like I'm actively doing something or not, especially when I'm feeling especially lonely or like if I just feel like more anxious or my OCD is flaring up, having that podcast is a sort of distraction in a good way where I'm more focused on like what they're saying and like listening to like my favorite people talking about a random thing as opposed to thinking about oh my God, like, why am I not doing this thing for the holidays? And like all those like ruminating thoughts. Awesome. Okay, one more question. Um, let's see. Okay. Is there anything in particular which helped with how your OCD impacted your work, especially in the winter? For me, I work from home, and in the summer, a huge thing that helped was getting outside in the sun, even for 5 minutes, and away from checking rituals. It's so much harder in the cold and dark.
I feel like again we can like go back to your point of like curating your vibe, where it's
Yeah.
like I think there's you know I like obviously in the summer it's so nice being able to like whip the windows open, like have that breeze come in, sun on your skin, laptop by the window, loving life. But I went to popped over to my friend's house today in the middle of her working day, and I walked into like her bedroom and she had her co-working setup, and I was like, this is so cute and cozy. Like she had like all the warm lights on, no overhead lighting, obviously. All the warm lights on. She had like a lovely mug of tea. She had like the electric blanket on. She was wearing like a really like it was such a cute like little work from home outfit. And I find that like even if like essentially like curate and making it nice and cozy. And you know, if you're someone who you do work from home, I think the most important thing is to leave the house. So like even if you go on like a half an hour walk before you start your working day, and like grabbing yourself a coffee on the way back. But also like there are so many like little cute coffee shops that you can work in, and again like romanticizing the winter. Yeah, no, that's sort of my sort of tips, but I'd love to know yours as well.
Yeah, I honestly like, and I know I said this earlier, it's just getting outside. And I know it sucks to go outside when it's cold and snowy. Like I'm looking outside and there's snow on the ground and I haven't left my house yet. But I like even before this like webinar, I made it a point that afterwards I'm going to walk and get a coffee because I know it helps me mentally. So even if you just take yourself outside for 5 minutes, even if you just like walk around your block, I honestly think that just helps so, so much. Like treat it like medicine. It's like your prescription, 5 minutes even, just go outside. And like even though the air is cold, the sun is still there somewhat, right? So it does help you feel a little bit better. All right, we have time for one more question and then we can wrap it up. Um, okay, let's do this one. All right. Definitely feel keeping busy helps hugely with OCD. However, I was wondering how you balance also allowing yourself to rest slash downtime to stop being busy feeling overwhelming. So like, yeah, how do you deal with um like being busy but also like having time for yourself and being restful?
Yeah, I find that this is definitely something I do struggle with because, again, I find socializing is the best thing for my OCD and keeping myself really busy. So can sometimes like overdo it and like book in plans for like every single day of the week. And then I'm like, what have I done? But, you know, it sounds really, you know, it might sound a little bit clinical, but I always make sure that I have at least one day after work or 2 days after work where I'm not doing anything. And essentially, because I do always seem to have like plans after work, or I always have like a pretty packed out weekend, I then actually look forward to having that time alone in the evening rather than dreading it. I'm really lucky that I live with my housemate, who's like also my best friend. So like even when I'm having like a downtime, I'm still sort of lightly socializing because like we'll sort of be hanging out with each other, like watching a TV show or something. But I find the best thing because I think when I was in at my lowest with my OCD and my symptoms were really bad and I wasn't seeing anyone. I would see these evenings, I always felt like as soon as it was dark, everything just felt worse. So like these evenings alone, I would absolutely like dread them and I would like be so scared. And I just found like the best thing for me was to oh my God, sorry, I've lost my train of thought a little bit. I found the best thing for me was to essentially just make sure I have like I'm still keeping a good social life and then actually making sure I essentially allocate like time to like have some downtime because I end up actually really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, awesome. I do see this one last question that I'm gonna just do quickly. And I think like I can answer this too, but hi Jordan, I've been a longtime fan and you talking about OCD has made me realize I might have it as well. How is it like finding a therapist in the process of getting diagnosed? I'm from a third slash developing country, so it's harder to find a therapist, which is why I'm interested in using NOCD to navigate whether or not I have it. Anyways, thank you. Um, I can say a few words if do you have anything you wanted to add to this or
I mean, I'm gonna let you take it away with the sort of no CD,
yeah.
the no CD of it all.
Yes, the
But
NOCD of
yeah,
it all.
the no CD of it all. But like, thank you so, so much, and I'm so glad that like me speaking about it has like helped in some kind of way. I found my therapist online, and like, and again, it's not I have an in-person therapist, but there are services like NoCD where it can all be done remotely, which is obviously like so amazing. And I think that's like one of the best parts about like technology development, the fact that you can get therapy from like the comfort of your own home from, whichever country you live in. But I will leave for you to take it away with the rest of the question.
I mean, 100% agree with what you were saying. And we do, NoCD offers therapy in many, many countries. Of course, like the thing that gets tricky can be insurance covering and not covering. But definitely check out if we offer therapy where you're at. However, I know it can be a little difficult to find therapy for OCD specialized in OCD abroad. One thing that definitely helps, and we have a lot of people that still use our app and our community. Our community is on our website on the app. It's like basically like Reddit, but monitored by actual therapists and people with OCD living with OCD. It's somewhere you can interact with other people, share your feelings, share your thoughts. A lot of people use that because it's so helpful to be part of a community of people that understand what you're going through. And if you're unable to get treatment, I still think that's very helpful because at least you're not alone and at least you have these people that can support you. And then our app also definitely download it because there's a lot of resources for coming down from flare-ups, like dealing with spikes in OCD, even if you aren't signed up for therapy. So there are resources in that. So basically, like TLDR, check out the app, check out our community, and then also you can always check if your insurance is covered by us or not, wherever you're at. Okay, let's wrap this up then. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Jordan. This was an amazing conversation, and I hope it helped a lot of you. I think we had a great discussion, and I just want to remind all of you that seasonal struggles don't have to be permanent. You can get through this. Yes, it's hard, but we are stronger than our OCD, and specialized treatment can definitely help. If you guys are wondering about therapy, want to just like learn more about ERP and how NoCD can help, feel free to schedule a free 15-minute call with our team to learn more. There's a little link in the chat for you guys to click. But other than that, thank you so much. Thank you, Jordan. If you have any last words you want to share, you can go ahead.
Thank you so, so much for having me. And yeah, no, I mean, I'm just like echoing what you've said, like you are stronger than your OCD and yeah, no, like don't be talk to people, don't feel afraid to speak to someone. And again, like I think utilizing the NoCD app, even if you don't use NoCD therapy yourself, to be able to talk to people, to have like almost instant advice, instant reputable advice, because obviously there can be a lot of misinformation online, is really important. Yeah.
Yay. Thank you all so much for joining. We'll send a recording of this out to your emails soon.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.